The stink came first. Sweat. Old metal. Fear. It hung in the slave cages like a heavy fog. Lyra curled in the corner and hugged her knees. She tried to make herself small. Smaller than a shadow. Smaller than a breath. If she vanished, maybe the pain would miss her. Her skin was a soft blue, now smeared with dust. Her copper hair, once bright, was a knot of strands. She was alien, a people known for beauty and quiet music. That gift had not saved her. Raiders took her when she was a child. Since then, years had vanished into someone else's pockets. Now she was on Vord Prime, edge of law, center of greed, sold to Gorak the Glut, lord of flesh and stolen things. The cages rattled when he laughed. The walls trembled when he fed. Lyra had heard whispers. Gorak liked to break spirits. He called it training. He called it making them elegant. The broken ones did not return to the cages. They lived behind silk curtains. They did not smile. Boots thudded on the stones. A guard with a boar face stopped at her cell. His tusks were stained. His keys rang like cold bells. On your feet, he grunted. The door screeched open. He grabbed her arm and dragged her into the corridor. Lyra stumbled. Chains clinked. Other prisoners looked away. No one wanted to share eyes with fate. They reached a great door with Gorak's mark burned into it. The door slid open. Heat rolled out like a beast's breath. The hall beyond was bright with lamps and noise. Many species were gathered. Robes, gems, perfume, laughter that did not reach the eyes. On a raised platform lay Gorak. His bulk spilled across cushions. Rings cut into his fingers. Fat flies of praise buzzed around him. Bring her, Gorak said. His voice was smooth and rotten at once. The guard shoved Lyra forward. She fell to her knees. She kept her gaze down. A finger with a sharp nail lifted her chin. Gorak studied her face. He licked his lips. Fine, he purred. Soft lines. Brighter hair once, I think. You will do. He snapped his fingers. Valrek. A tall, thin overseer appeared. His skin was pale and tight. His eyes had no kindness in them. He bowed low. Yes, master. Begin her lessons, Gorak said. The moon convergence feast is in 3 nights. I want her ready. No marks the guests can see. It will be done, Valrek said. He seized Lyra's chain and led her away through a garden that smelled of sweet flowers and bad memories. Training posts stood in a ring like dead trees. Valrek strapped Lyra to one. His smile did not touch his eyes. From his robe, he drew a whip with tiny needles along its edge. Do not fight it, he whispered. You will break faster. Everyone does. Lyra closed her eyes. The first strike was white fire. It stole her breath. It tried to steal more. She felt the next and the next. Each one sought her center. Each one wanted to tell her who she was. But there, deep inside, something small glowed. She guarded it with both hands of her mind. It was not loud. It did not shout. It was a coal, not a blaze. An ember. She had kept it through cages and cold nights and silent mornings. It was hers. Hope. They could bind her wrists. They could bruise her back. They could name her property. But they could not own that ember unless she gave it away. She would not. She breathed in. She counted. She remembered the river near her old home. She remembered the sound of reeds in the wind. She remembered the word tomorrow. Valrek grew bored when she did not scream. He tried new angles. He murmured how quickly some begged. Lyra let the words pass like smoke. The sun slid across the garden. The light went gold. The needles went back into the robe. Valrek patted her cheek like she was a tool. Again at dawn, he said, we will polish you. You will shine. He left her tied to the post while the sky turned purple. Lamps clicked on one by one. Music rose from the great hall like a snake. Lyra rested her forehead against the wood and breathed. The pain hummed. The ember hummed back. From beyond the walls came a faint thunder. Not storm. Not drums. Engines. Large ones. The sound rolled through the stone and through her bones. Guards paused and glanced upward. The music faltered, then grew louder to hide its own fear. Lyra opened her eyes. A cold wind brushed the garden, strange in the heat. She could not see the sky from here. She could only hear it. Something new had entered it. Something heavy. Something sure. She did not know the shape of it. She did not know the name. She only knew the ember inside her leaped, as if it had smelled rain after a long drought. Across the palace, Gorak laughed again. He raised a cup. He did not look up. Lyra did. Or she would have, if the walls allowed it. Instead, she listened, and she held the ember close, and she whispered one word into the dark. Soon. The storm never came, but the air felt charged, alive, like the moment before lightning strikes. Lyra could feel it pulsing in the air, humming through the chains that bound her wrists. She could almost taste it. Somewhere above the slave gardens, engines roared again, closer this time. The guards noticed it too. They looked up, squinting at the darkening sky. Probably smugglers, one muttered. They'll get blasted out of orbit. But his voice lacked its usual sneer. The wind carried dust through the narrow garden paths. The torches flickered. Lyra lifted her head. Her back burned from the whip, but pain didn't matter. For the first time in years, something inside her whispered, "This is not the end." She closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. And then, silence. A silence so deep that even the insects stopped singing. Then, impact. The ground shook. One of the towers cracked. The guards swore and ran toward the walls. Distant shouting rose like a wave. Lyra's heart hammered. Through the gaps between pillars, she saw streaks of fire descending from the sky. Not meteors. Dropships. Sleek, dark, human. She didn't know how she knew. They simply looked human. Sharp, angular, built for war, not beauty. The first explosion hit the front gates. Fire bloomed. Metal screamed. Lyra's chains rattled as shockwaves rolled through the ground. Guards shouted orders, but most were running. The palace, so full of laughter and cruelty an hour ago, was now chaos. She pulled at her chains until her wrists bled. "Please," she whispered, though she didn't know to whom. "Let this be real." Then, the door to the garden burst open. 3 figures stormed in, tall, armored, faces hidden behind black helmets with glowing visors. Their armor shimmered, reflecting torchlight like liquid. They moved fast, silent, efficient. The first one raised a weapon that looked nothing like the guards' crude blasters. One pulse, one flash, and the nearest guard dropped, unconscious before he hit the ground. Another turned, spotting Lyra chained to the post. "Civilian," a modulated voice barked. The figure rushed forward, slicing her chains with a blade that hummed blue with energy. The metal snapped. Lyra stumbled forward, free for the first time in years, but too weak to run. The soldier caught her before she fell. "You're safe now," the voice said. "We're clearing the compound." Her lips trembled. The words didn't feel real. Who are you?" The soldier tilted his head slightly, visor glinting. "Humans," he said simply. "We came for the slaves." The door behind them slammed open again. A massive guard charged in, swinging a blade the size of a door. The human turned, shoved Lyra behind him, and met the charge head-on. His blade cut through the guard's armor like paper. The creature collapsed, silent. The human didn't flinch. He looked back at her, voice calm but firm. "Can you walk?" Lyra nodded, though her legs barely held her. "Good," he said, pulling a small beacon from his belt. "Hold on." He pressed it. A shimmer of light surrounded them both, and suddenly, the air folded. In a blink, they stood in the ruined throne hall. Gorak was there, his fat body trembling behind his surviving guards. He screamed orders that no one obeyed. His empire was collapsing around him. The soldier's commander stood at the center of the chaos. A man without a helmet, his face sharp and human, eyes cold as winter oceans. His armor bore the insignia of the Terran vanguard, the name whispered in fear across galaxies. Lyra froze. She'd heard the stories. Humans, creatures from a forgotten cradle world, had fought entire empires to free their own kind. Some called them monsters. Others called them miracles. The commander looked at her. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, hers wide with disbelief, his steady with purpose. "Secure all civilians," he ordered, "and bring that one to me." The soldier beside Lyra gave a sharp nod and guided her forward through the smoke and chaos. Gorak screamed as humans surrounded him, their rifles humming. His words melted into babbling pleas. The commander, taller than the rest, calm in the middle of madness, stepped down from the dais. "Lyra of the Alien," he said, somehow knowing her name. "You're free." She blinked at him, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. "Free." He nodded once. "Gorak's reign ends tonight. You belong to no one now." She shook her head, unable to believe. Why help me? You don't even know us." For the first time, the commander's expression softened. "Because once," he said quietly, "someone helped us too." Outside, thunder rolled again, the sound of ships lifting off, carrying the freed toward a new dawn. Inside, Lyra stood trembling, a lifetime of chains falling away, replaced by one fragile thing she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. And for the first time, it didn't feel small. It felt infinite. The battle was over, but the echoes stayed. Smoke curled through the shattered corridors of the palace. The once perfect marble floors were cracked, slick with oil and ash. Freed slaves huddled together beneath torn banners. For the first time in decades, silence ruled the hall, and it sounded strange. Lyra stood in the middle of it, trembling. Her mind couldn't catch up to her eyes. Hours ago, she was a chained ornament in Gorak's cage. Now, the monster was gone, dragged away in cuffs by soldiers who moved like shadows. The man who led them stood on the dais where Gorak once feasted, watching everything with sharp, steady eyes. He looked human, but something about him felt bigger, heavier, as if gravity itself obeyed his will. His armor was scratched and blackened, his face marked with faint scars that told a story she could only guess. He had that kind of calm that comes only from surviving too much. When his gaze shifted to her, Lyra almost looked away. It wasn't harsh, it was knowing. He saw her pain, her defiance, and something else she hadn't known still existed inside her. He stepped down, the heavy boots echoing in the quiet. The crowd parted. "Name," he said, voice deep and clear. "Lyra," she whispered. He nodded. "I'm Captain Arden Vale, Terran Vanguard." He studied her a moment longer. "You were under Gorak's control?" She laughed bitterly. "Control? He owned me." The word owned burned in her throat. "For 20 years. Arden's jaw tightened. "Not anymore." His voice had weight, like thunder wrapped in compassion. When he spoke, people listened. Not out of fear, out of belief. A younger soldier ran up to him. "Sir, we've secured the compound. Over 300 survivors, maybe more. Most are in shock." "Get the medics moving," Arden said. "No one gets left behind." "Yes, sir." As the soldier hurried off, Arden turned back to her. "You're injured." "I've been worse." "Not anymore," he repeated, this time softer, almost like a promise. He gestured toward the doorway, where the night sky glowed red with the light of landing craft. "Come. You're safe now." Lyra followed him through the broken hall. The air smelled like ozone and rain, sharp and clean. Bodies of slavers lay where they had fallen. Humans moved among them, checking pulses, tagging survivors. They worked like a machine, but their faces, those faces had compassion. Every order was followed by kindness. Every motion had purpose. As they stepped outside, the night opened wide. Ships hovered above the palace ruins, their undersides glowing blue. The stars beyond them looked closer, brighter, as if even they wanted to witness what was happening. Lyra stared in awe. "You came all this way for us." "For everyone," Arden said. "No one deserves chains." She looked at him, confused. "You don't even know us. Humans, you're kind. They say you only fight for your own." He gave a small, tired smile. "Once, that was true. But then we remembered what it was like to be small. To be helpless. We swore we'd never let anyone feel that again. Not if we could stop it." His words sank into her like warmth in winter. No flowery speeches. No hollow comfort. Just truth. A medic approached her, scanning her injuries. "She's got whip trauma and energy burns. Need to get her stabilized." "I can walk," Lyra said quickly, but her legs betrayed her. She stumbled, and Arden caught her. His arm was steady, solid. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. In that moment, Lyra saw something behind his calm, grief. Old grief. The kind that never fully leaves. "Careful," he said quietly. "The ground's uneven." She nodded, breath shaking. "Thank you, Captain." He almost smiled. "Arden's fine." As they reached the landing ramp of one of the Terran ships, Lyra looked back. The palace burned behind them. The flames painted the night gold and red, consuming the place that had stolen her years. She expected to feel rage. She didn't. Only release. She turned back to the ship, its hull gleaming like a promise. The ramp hissed open. Warm light spilled out. Inside, she saw rows of people, aliens, Zathrians, even a few humans, tended by medics, wrapped in blankets, weeping, laughing, holding each other. She hesitated at the ramp's edge. Arden's voice broke through her thoughts. "You can step inside, Lyra. The door only opens one way, from this side." Something in his tone, gentle but unyielding, made her move. Her bare feet touched the ramp. It was warm beneath her skin. For the first time in forever, she felt safe. Behind her, the engines roared to life. Ahead of her, the stars waited. As the ship lifted from the ground, she pressed a hand against the viewport and watched Vorg Prime shrink into darkness. Her chains were gone, her body free, but deep inside, something new stirred. Not fear, not doubt. It was purpose. Whatever these humans were, whatever they stood for, Lyra wanted to understand it. Because the ember that had survived 20 years of pain had finally found something to burn for. And it was just getting started. The hum of the engines was like a heartbeat, steady, constant, alive. Lyra sat near a wide viewport, watching stars slide past in silver streaks. She dreamed of the stars once, as a child. They were freedom then. Now, they were real, and she didn't know what to feel. The Terran ship was nothing like the palace. No gold, no silk, no chains. It was metal, plain and gray, but it breathed. People moved with quiet purpose. Every corridor was alive with voices, with laughter, with the soft hiss of doors. Humans, so strange, so fierce, walked among freed slaves, offering water, food, blankets. They didn't shout. They didn't strike. They asked if anyone was in pain. It was the first time in Lyra's life that power came with gentleness. She touched her wrist where the chains had been. The skin was raw, but it no longer bled. The medic who treated her smiled as he worked, his voice calm. "We've seen worse," he said. "You'll heal fine." Lyra didn't reply. She didn't trust her voice not to tremble. As she stepped into the ship's main bay, she saw rows of survivors resting on padded benches. Children clung to their parents. A few sang softly in languages she didn't know. A group of humans distributed food packs, real food, warm and simple. Steam curled in the air, rich with smells she'd never known. To her surprise, her stomach growled, and a soldier grinned. "Go on," he said, handing her a bowl. "It's stew. You'll like it." She hesitated, staring at the brown liquid. It looked nothing like the colorful plates Gorak's guests had feasted on. But the first sip almost broke her. It was warm. It was kind. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth and swallowed tears instead of words. Later, she wandered to the command deck. She didn't know why. Maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper. The door slid open, and there he was, Captain Ardenvale, staring out into the dark sea of stars. The light from the console washed across his face, strong, thoughtful, lined with quiet exhaustion. He didn't turn when she entered. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. "I don't know how to," Lyra admitted. "It feels wrong to rest when others still suffer." Arden nodded slowly. "It used to feel that way to me too." He glanced at her, eyes the color of distant storms. "But rest isn't weakness. It's recovery. Without it, you burn out, and burning people can't light the way." She studied him. "You've done this before. Freed others like us." "Hundreds," he said simply. "Every raid, every mission, every world we hit. It's the same. Slavers rise, we break them. They rebuild, we burn them again. It's endless." He smiled faintly. "But the faces we save, they make it worth it." Lyra stepped closer. "Why? What do you gain?" His gaze dropped to the stars. "Once, long ago, we were the ones in chains. Humans were scattered, enslaved, forgotten. The galaxy called us feral stock. But we fought. Not with numbers, with will. The day we won our freedom, we swore we'd never let it die quietly." He turned to her, voice deep and steady. "That's the only oath that matters to me." The deck lights dimmed as the ship passed through a cloud of glowing dust. It shimmered outside the viewport, painting their faces in blue light. Lyra reached out, her fingers brushing the glass. "It's beautiful." Arden nodded. "Freedom always is." She looked at him then, not as a rescuer, but as a man burdened by purpose. His scars, his stillness, his command, it all made sense. He carried the weight of every person he saved, every world he couldn't. "Do you ever stop?" she asked. "Never," he said quietly. "Because somewhere, right now, someone else is waiting for us." Lyra stared at the reflection of the stars in his eyes and felt the ember in her chest flare. Hope had returned, yes, but something else grew beside it. Respect. And something gentler, harder to name. A voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, hyperspace corridor is stable. ETA to Arc Station, 2 hours." Arden nodded. "Good." Tell Medbay to prep the new arrivals for docking. Then, to Lyra, when we reach the station, you'll have a choice. You can stay with your people, or you can stay with us. She blinked. With you? He smiled faintly. We'll need translators. The Vanguard always needs brave souls who've seen the worst, and still choose to fight for better. Lyra's throat tightened. I'm not brave. He turned back to the stars. You survived Gorak's world. That's more than brave, it's legendary. For a long moment, neither spoke. The stars ahead shimmered like a curtain being drawn aside. Beyond it, Lyra saw faint lights, distant but steady. A city among the stars. Ark Station, Arden said. Home of the free. Lyra exhaled, her reflection flickering against the glass. For the first time, she wasn't watching freedom happen to someone else. She was flying toward it. And maybe, just maybe, towards something even greater. The ship emerged from hyperspace like a ghost breaking through mist. Outside the viewport, a vast structure filled the stars, Ark Station. It spun slowly, wrapped in silver and light, its rings glimmering with the glow of distant suns. It wasn't a fortress or a market, it was alive. Lyra's breath caught. Is that all human? Captain Arden smiled faintly. Not anymore. We built it. Yes, but we built it for everyone. As they approached, she saw ships of every shape docking and departing. Some were Terran vessels, sharp and angular. Others were smooth, curved, alien. It was a mosaic of life, refugees, traders, healers, soldiers, all bound by a single truth, freedom. The docking clamps hissed as they touched down. The ramp lowered with a sigh of pressure. Warm light spilled in, soft and golden. Lyra squinted against it, feeling it wash over her face like sunrise. The air smelled clean, almost sweet. Not perfume, life. She stepped forward. The floor beneath her feet wasn't marble or steel meant to impress. It was simple stone, worn smooth by countless travelers. Hollow banners rippled above her, displaying the Terran emblem, 2 hands clasped around a star. Below it, words written in a dozen languages glowed softly. Unity through mercy. Crowds moved through the station's atrium. Humans with cybernetic arms, scaled aliens carrying children, floating drones humming softly. The sound wasn't chaos. It was harmony. This place, Lyra whispered. It doesn't feel real. Arden stood beside her, arms folded. It wasn't once. We made it that way. They walked together down a broad path lined with trees. Real trees, their roots sinking into soil imported from Earth. Children played under them, laughing in a dozen tongues. Everywhere Lyra looked, she saw kindness. Not perfection. There were still scars, tension, pain, but beneath it all, there was peace. A woman in medical uniform approached with a tablet. Captain, we've registered over 300 new refugees from Vorg Prime. Most stable. Some need deeper trauma care. Arden nodded. Assign them quarters on Deck 9. Prioritize the children. He looked at Lyra. You'll be assigned a room too. You've earned rest. She frowned. I don't want rest. I want to understand. That made him pause. Understand what? Why, she said. Why you fight for people you've never met. Why you keep going when it costs you so much. He studied her for a long moment, then gestured for her to follow. Come with me, he said. They passed through a corridor filled with murals, massive, moving images painted in holographic light. Lyra stopped before one of them. It showed humans chained in iron cages, defying their captors, rising in rebellion. Another showed them breaking through the dark, reaching the stars. Arden's voice was quiet. That was us. Before we were free. Lyra stared at the faces in the mural. The defiance in their eyes looked familiar, the same spark she'd seen in the slaves from Vorg Prime. You remember your pain? She said softly. He nodded. We don't hide it. We honor it. Every time we free someone, it means that pain wasn't for nothing. They stopped at a massive viewing deck. Outside, the stars shimmered like an ocean. Ships drifted lazily, their lights blinking like distant fireflies. Look out there, Arden said. Every one of those lights. It's a world waiting for a second chance. The galaxy's full of people like you, Lyra. People who think they're forgotten. She turned toward him. And you go to all of them? As many as we can. His expression hardened. But the more we free, the more enemies we make. As if on cue, the intercom buzzed. Captain Vale, priority message from Sector Helion. Raider fleets are on the move again. Arden's shoulders tensed. They never learn. He turned to Lyra. You asked why we fight? Because the moment we stop, people like Gorak win again. The lights dimmed as an alert tone pulsed through the deck. Lyra's heart pounded. She could almost feel the energy shift, the piece of Ark Station trembling under the shadow of war. But even as alarms sounded, she saw no fear in the humans around her. Technicians ran to their posts. Medics prepared emergency base. Pilots jogged toward launch ramps with calm focus. It wasn't panic, it was resolve. Arden looked at her. You should stay here. It's safe. Lyra shook her head. I've been safe in cages before. I don't want that again. He hesitated, then smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said he'd already guessed she'd say that. Then you'd better learn how to fight, he said. Because freedom doesn't defend itself. She followed him down the hall, her heart racing with a strange mix of fear and excitement. The ember inside her, the one that had survived every lash and chain, now burned like a torch. For years, she'd prayed for someone to save her. Now, for the first time, she realized she wanted to save others. And deep inside, she knew, the story of her freedom wasn't ending. It was just changing shape, from survival to purpose, from silence to flame. The city beyond the stars had given her shelter, but the fire in her heart whispered a single truth. She wasn't meant to stay. She was meant to rise. The next morning, Ark Station no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a storm. The air hummed with tension. Alarms pulsed in quiet rhythm, the kind that said, war is coming. Lyra stood on one of the observation decks, watching ships detach from the docking rings, sleek, black Terran vessels, their engines glowing like molten suns. The fleet moved with silent precision, each ship sliding into formation as though guided by a single heartbeat. Captain Arden was already out there somewhere, commanding the Vanguard's lead cruiser, Resolute Dawn. He had left hours ago, but his words still echoed in her head. Freedom doesn't defend itself. It needs hands willing to hold the line. Lyra wanted those hands to be hers. When she arrived at the training bay, she half expected the humans to laugh. Instead, they simply nodded, handed her a training vest, and said, "Welcome to the Vanguard." The room was filled with movement, alien recruits and humans sparring side by side. Instructors barked orders, their voices sharp but never cruel. Lyra had never been shouted at without hatred before. It was strange, almost comforting. Her instructor was a scarred woman named Sergeant Harlow. She had eyes like cold glass and a grin like she'd seen too much and survived anyway. "You're alien," Harlow said, circling her. "Good eyesight, light frame. Fast, then. We'll build around that." "I'm not a soldier," Lyra said quietly. Harlow tossed her a training blade. "Neither were we once. The galaxy made us learn." The first strike nearly knocked her flat. The second left her breathless. But with every fall, Harlow offered a hand up, not a sneer. "Again," she'd say. "You'll thank me later." Hours passed. Sweat stung Lyra's eyes. Her arms trembled. Her back screamed. But beneath the exhaustion was something new, pride. She wasn't powerless anymore. She was becoming dangerous. Between drills, she met other survivors. A Zathrian engineer whose homeworld had been burned. A human medic who'd once been a captive like her. Every one of them had a story that ended the same way. The Terrans came, and everything changed. By night, Lyra found herself in the quiet of the observation ring again. Ark Station floated above a gas giant, its storms swirling below in ribbons of gold and white. She placed her palm against the glass. The reflection staring back wasn't the same woman who'd been chained in Gorak's garden. The door hissed open behind her. "You're still awake." She turned. Arden stepped inside, removing his gloves. His uniform was streaked with dust, his expression tired but alive. "You came back," she said, unable to hide the relief in her voice. "For now," he said. "The raiders scattered before we engaged. But it's a matter of time before they regroup." Lyra hesitated, then asked softly, "Why do they keep coming? Haven't they lost enough?" Arden leaned against the viewport beside her. "Because power never believes it can lose. It keeps taking until someone makes it stop." She looked down. "And you think I can help make it stop?" He smiled faintly. "I don't think. I know. You have something most soldiers don't." "What?" He tapped a finger over her heart. "Reason. You know what it feels like to live without hope. That makes you dangerous to those who steal it from others." Lyra's throat tightened. "You talk like I'm already one of you." Arden met her eyes. "You already are. Silence fell between them, not awkward, but heavy with meaning. The hum of the station filled the space where words failed. Outside, lightning flared across the planet's storms, lighting their faces in flashes of blue and gold. Then the intercom crackled again. Captain Vale, incoming transmission. It's the Hellion front. You need to see this. Arden straightened. Bridge. Now. Lyra followed instinctively, keeping pace beside him as they reached the command deck. The holographic screen flared to life, displaying a damaged Terran frigate. Its hull was scorched, its signal weak. This is Commander Rhodes of Vanguard Echo. We've been ambushed. Raider fleet regrouped in Hellion sector. Hundreds of ships. Civilians targeted. Static swallowed the rest. Arden's jaw clenched. How far? 3 jumps, said the officer at the console. He turned to Lyra. This is it. The line between light and shadow. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. Then let me stand on it. You're not ready for combat. She stepped forward. Neither were you once. Arden looked at her for a long moment. Then something changed in his eyes. Not softness. Respect. Finally, he nodded. Then you fly with me. But you follow every order I give. No heroics. Lyra's heart pounded. Understood, Captain. Welcome to the Vanguard, he said quietly. Let's go make the galaxy remember why humans are feared, and why hope is never weak. The hangar erupted into motion. Sirens flared. Engines thundered. Ships detached from their docks one by one, streaking into the dark. Lyra strapped into her seat beside Arden, the hum of the engines vibrating in her bones. She was terrified, but for once, it wasn't the fear of dying. It was the fear of not trying. As the stars stretched and folded around them, she gripped the armrest and whispered to herself. No more cages. The resolute Dawn leapt into hyperspace, carrying them straight toward the fire. The stars twisted, and the resolute Dawn burst from hyperspace into a nightmare. Helion's twin suns burned red over a dying world. Below them, fire rained from the sky, cities blazing like candles on a battlefield. Raider ships blackened the horizon, hundreds strong, their hulls jagged and bleeding light. The Terran fleet arrived in formation, a wall of steel and willpower. Command ships gleamed like meteors. Fighters darted forward like silver daggers. The hum of weapons charged the air, a storm waiting to be unleashed. Lyra sat at the co-pilot's console, her hands trembling slightly above the controls. This wasn't a drill. It wasn't a story. This was real war. The kind that decided who got to dream tomorrow. Captain Arden's voice cut through the rising chaos. Calm. Controlled. All wings, engage formation Delta. Protect the refugee transports. Raiders are targeting civilians. Copy that, Resolute Dawn, replied a dozen voices. The ship rocked as the first wave hit. Flashes of plasma fire streaking past their hull. Shields flared blue under impact. The deck shuddered beneath their boots. Lyra gritted her teeth and held the stabilizer level. Shields at 60%, an officer shouted. Arden didn't flinch. Redirect auxiliary power from aft batteries. Lyra's eyes darted across the panels. Captain, we'll lose half our firepower. He glanced at her. Better to shoot later than die now. She obeyed, fingers flying. The ship steadied. Another blast shook the hull, but the shields held. Enemy boarding crafts incoming, the tactical officer yelled. Let them try, Arden said. They'll find more than slaves waiting for them. Moments later, explosions rippled along the outer ring of the station they were defending. Raiders swarmed like insects, ships darting, firing, fleeing. But the Terrans moved differently. They didn't panic. They adapted. Every formation shifted with purpose. Human coordination is impossible. A Raider commander's voice crackled through intercepted comms. They fight like one mind. Arden smirked. That's the point. He turned to Lyra. How's your pulse? Too fast, she said honestly. Good. That means you're alive. He tapped a button. Turret control to co-pilot seat. Think you can handle it? Lyra blinked. You want me to? You wanted to fight. Now's the time. She swallowed hard, then gripped the targeting levers. Outside the viewport, 3 Raider interceptors swooped toward them. Her heart pounded as she lined up the crosshairs. Trust your instinct, Arden said quietly. The mind hesitates. The soul doesn't. She fired. The turrets roared. Twin streams of plasma ripped through the void, colliding with the first Raider ship. It exploded in a silent blossom of light. The second banked left, firing wildly. Lyra's hands moved before she could think. Another shot, another hit. The third tried to flee, but she tracked it through the smoke and sent it spinning into debris. The bridge erupted in cheers. Arden gave her a small, proud nod. Welcome to the fight. But there was no time to celebrate. A massive shadow loomed over the horizon. The raider flagship, Varkel's Maw. Twice the size of any Terran cruiser, its cannons glowed with the heat of a dying star. They're charging their main gun, someone yelled. It'll vaporize the refugee transports. Arden's jaw tightened. Not if we stand in front of it. Captain, that's suicide. Not if they can't hit what they can't see. He turned to Lyra. I need you to reroute all auxiliary power to the stealth field. When I say now, you hit it. Understand? She hesitated. But the shields? Forget the shields. The only shield we have is timing. Outside, the Varkel's Maw fired. The beam tore through space. A column of blinding energy aimed straight at the refugee convoy. Now, Arden shouted. Lyra slammed her hand onto the console. The resolute dawn vanished, dissolving into refracted light. The beam screamed past where they had been seconds earlier, ripping through empty void. Arden grinned. Let's return the favor. He yanked the ship around and dove straight for the flagship. Target their power core. Manual firing. Lyra's hands danced across the controls. Locked. Fire. The cannons unleashed their fury. Bolts of blue energy tore through the raider flagship's underbelly, punching deep into its reactor. The explosion that followed was silent but immense, a sunrise in space. The shockwave rattled every ship for miles. One by one, the remaining raiders broke formation, their fleet collapsing into chaos. Terran ships pursued, driving them into the void. The battle was won. When silence finally returned, Lyra realized her hands were still shaking. Arden reached over and switched off the weapons systems. Breathe, he said. You did well. She looked at him, eyes shining with disbelief. I killed them. He nodded slowly. You saved thousands more. Outside, the wreckage of Varkel's Maw drifted across the Helion sky, burning, falling, dying. The stars beyond it glimmered cold and eternal. Arden turned to the bridge crew. Send word to Arc Station. Tell them the Helion front is free. A cheer rippled through the ship. Soldiers embraced. Officers smiled for the first time in days. Lyra just stared at the stars, her reflection shimmering in the glass. She felt the ember inside her pulse, brighter than ever. But it wasn't just hope now. It was fire. Purpose. Arden watched her quietly. You've changed, he said. Lyra nodded. No. I've remembered. He tilted his head. Remembered what? That I was never meant to be someone's property. I was meant to be someone's proof. Arden smiled. Not the kind of smile a commander gives a recruit, but the kind a believer gives another believer. Then you're one of us now. The stars ahead glowed softly, reflected in their eyes. The war wasn't over. It never would be. But for the first time, the galaxy had a new name to whisper with both awe and fear. The slave who became the vanguard. And as the resolute dawn turned toward the light of distant worlds, the voice of Captain Arden Vale echoed through the comms. Remember, Helion. Remember that hope fights back. And Lyra, the girl who once prayed to vanish, now smiled through tears as she whispered into the stars. And this time, hope has a name.